gone too far, Mitch. You've crossed the line. I love how no one's surprised either. But one thing that I always like to talk about is kind of perceptions throughout history. I really like classical mythology, a lot of Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Egyptian mythology. I love it. And one thing that really sticks out to me is if you look through ancient myths, ancient Greek myths especially, Greek and Roman, because the one that comes to mind is Heracles, aka Hercules, but there's a lot of other ones. Their heroes are flawed. They make mistakes and they overcome them. And that's one thing that speaks to me about those that I look up to, is a matter of they're not flawless either. They're going to make mistakes. We have a tendency as a society when a celebrity does something wrong to be like, oh my gosh, let's cut them off, they're ruined, their career is over, they're done. And I'm always like, we don't know 100% what happened. Now granted, some things are egregious. Some things are to the point where I'm like, okay, no, get his butt to jail, you know? But if somebody just does a little slip up, has a problem, one that comes to my mind, honestly, is, for example, people who have problems with drugs and alcohol. Alcoholism is a disease, you know, and people get addicted to things, and it's horrible, and it's tough. And speaking as somebody who has done some not so savory things in my past, and, you know, I learned from my mistakes. Again, like we talked about earlier, is that learning from your mistakes. You don't just have to do that, other people have to do that. Your heroes, your role models, the people in the spotlight are gonna go through those challenges too. And you know who I really look to through this? I have a couple people I like to point out that I hold very high regard for, and it's one is Robert Downey Jr. That man went through some stuff. He had some issues. He did some not so savory things. And look at him now. He recovered, he sobered up, he rebuilt his career, he made amends for what he did, and now he's Iron Man. And, you know, it's one of those things, and that's a great story. I love that. And that's that thing that I look up to people that can do that, because I think the biggest part of what makes somebody a hero is when they can overcome those bumps in the road, the things that might, you know, that are gonna be like, I made a mistake. I think the biggest thing you can admit as a person that makes you a hero in my eyes is, I was wrong. It's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to admit you were wrong. It's one of the most powerful things you can do, because it frees you. It's like, I was wrong. Now I don't have to hold myself up to that expectation. Now, sometimes the other thing to keep in mind too is that perception about our heroes, that they are going to be flawless, perfect. They can't do everything alone. Daring Do couldn't have done that by herself. She thought she could, but she couldn't. It's important to remember and keep that in mind. We all need help sometimes, and it's okay to reach out and ask for that help. Doesn't make you any less of a person. Didn't make her any less of a pony to admit to Rainbow Dash in that moment. I guess it is good to have some help. You know, I can't do everything alone, and that was the big thing for that episode. She kept saying, I work alone, but then when she opened herself up to it, she got it done. And you can only imagine what could have happened if she had tried to lift that ring by herself. I don't think it would have happened. So, going along with that, we're going to keep on with Daring Do. Talk about another time that we saw her and some things that happened.
My last quest took me to a village in southern Equestria, where I started seeing wheels.
to see that, actually.
So all we have to do is go down there and explain to these ponies that none of this stuff is true. Easy peasy cheesy. But that's just the thing. It is true. What? I guess I've always been so focused on saving Price's relics and stopping the bad guys that I never really thought about the mess I leave behind. You are in a tricky pickle. But why is all this happening now? I guess ponies are finally fed up. Either way, I'm done with adventures. Having or writing.
Heroes aren't flawless either. They're going to make mistakes, even in the pursuit of something good. Much like what we talked about earlier with amending fences, where Twilight was pursuing something good and still hurt someone. Daring Do is so focused on getting the priceless relic. She writes these books, she does all these amazing things, but there's consequences to actions. And it's important to recognize that, and it's something she hadn't done up until this point. All these things she did had side effects, that there are things that got destroyed. Did anybody attend the guest of honor panel yesterday? And there's that part that they put in there about like all the mess that's left behind. I was so glad they did that. You don't see that very much. There's always that thing of like, you do something major, sometimes there's a little bit of that mess afterward. It's acknowledging that, being able to clean it up. And a lot of times we kind of overlook that because like these people are, our role models or heroes tend to be like these godlike figures. They can do anything and whatever, you know, we don't think about the consequences to the actions. Even when they have good intentions, sometimes there are other things that get left behind, and it's important to realize that in the end.
I saw an opportunity to write you out of the story for good! And with the distraction you leave in your wake, it didn't take too much to convince ponies you were a villain.
You're wrong, Cavaleron. And I won't let you break my spirit again. Because I'm never going to give up hope that I can protect ponies and ancient treasures from miscreants like you. Thanks for helping me come to my senses. You two are true friends. Are you kidding? That was awesome! We're just glad you're back to your old self again. Me too. But I'm glad I realized that even if you're fighting for something good, you're still responsible for your actions. And if something bad happens that you didn't intend, you shouldn't give up hope or lose faith in yourself. Yeah! All you gotta do is make it right. Feel free to use that in your next book. You know, I think I will.
I don't think I can say it better than what they said there. It really, it's owning up to what happened, realizing it, having the ability to have that sight of, I need to make amends, I need to make things right. Sometimes things are gonna mess up. It's kind of noticing the themes going through this. We're gonna mess up. We can make the baby steps, make the amends, make everything right again, make everything whole. And that's the sign of a true hero. You know, there's always gonna be stumbling blocks. There's always gonna be things. You just use those stepping stones. Admit when things go wrong. Build yourself back up. Make the amends. I don't think there's anything that can make a hero or a role model stronger than that. And that's why I really like Daring Do. That's why I like Robert Downey Jr. You know who else I love too is Weird Al. Weird Al is awesome. Yeah. You know, like he had his biggest hit ever. There was a miscommunication between, was Amish Paradise, by the way, between Coolio's people and his people, where he said no, and Al didn't know, and he really, you know, and it was his biggest hit ever. And then Coolio was like, dude, no. I said no. And Al was like, no, I feel terrible. I got to do something. I got to reach out. And that man has continued, and he's strengthened himself, and he is still honestly, I think he's making his best music now than he ever has, which is just awesome. And he was on Pony. That always helps. Yay. So, speaking of making amends, let's get to redemption. And who better to use to talk about redemption than these two? Huh? So, redemption is a big theme in the show. Let's talk about how the process happens, shall we?
You will never rule Equestria. Any power you may have had in this world is gone. Tonight, you've shown everyone who you really are. You've shown them what is in your heart.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know there was another way.
The magic of friendship doesn't just exist in Equestria. It's everywhere. You can seek it out, or you can forever be alone. The choice is yours.
But all I've ever done since being here is drive everyone apart. I don't know the first thing about friendship.
I bet they can teach you.
The big thing with Sunset is she shows instant remorse for what she did. That key line of, I didn't know there was another way. She thought the only way to get what she wanted is just by seeking power. Those of you who are early enough, we played My Past Is Not Today before the panel started, and she sings in that song about, she thought there was only one way to get this power, to have this ambition, and it took having these friends to get her to realize. But honestly, even before she made the friends, that is in mid-transition. Those are tears. She does not like what is happening and what she's becoming. And I had a friend who, a good friend of mine, who really broke down this movie in some panels and really talked about the fact of how it seems that Sunset's plan, she just wants the power, but everything goes awry, and after she gets the crown on her, it's like it corrupts her. And she goes from, I just want power, to, I'm gonna do all these things, and I'm gonna rule everyone. And she has this pain in her eyes that continues, that when she's defeated and she's like, I can't believe I did this, I went too far. Having that remorse is such an important thing. Now, there are sometimes we've had our villains where that doesn't happen.
When Twilight and her friends defeated me, I chose to run away and seek revenge. You don't have to. You can be the leader your subjects deserve.
There is no revenge you can ever conceive of that will come close to what I will exact upon you one day, Starlight Glimmer.
So that's not how to show remorse. I want to talk about something, social science concept, social psychology, sociology, it all ties in, called the actor-observer effect. The way that breaks down essentially is that we have this tendency within ourselves when we're analyzing something that we see that's awry in the world, a problem that's happening. If it's a problem that's happening to us, we have a tendency in our brain to go, something is wrong with the world. Now, when we see something that happens to someone else, we go, something is wrong with them. It's kind of a way that our brain is basically trained to protect our self-image, our self-esteem, that's the word I was looking for, our self-esteem. I had a professor once tell me that about 90% of all human behavior can be explained as an attempt to protect our own self-esteem. And think about this with the scene we just saw with Chrysalis there. As she's looking at this, Starlight gives her that chance, that moment, and saying, you can be the leader your people need. They needed this. They found another way. You can still be good and be a part of this. And how does Chrysalis react? She rejects it instantly, and she goes, no, you messed up my kingdom. I'm going to get revenge on you. And it's one thing that Starlight, of all people, knows, because she had the exact same reaction at the end of the cutie map. Of, it's not that there is an ability to bring people and ponies together, with still having their cutie marks, with still having their talents, that we can get along. She rejected it instantly. It's like, no, you did me wrong. I'm rejecting you. It's a thing to keep in mind within yourselves. When you're analyzing something you think is wrong with the world, or something that happens to you,